I don't think it was very nice of you to walk off the way you did.
I didn't win. I didn't win.
I know you didn't win, but the important thing is you was in there trying. Now, that's what's important.
They don't give you no medal for trying.
I know that. I know they don't. And it's nice to win something. It's real nice to win something. But it's more important to know how not to win something.
I know how to do that real good.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks for the Superstars. Tonight, Wade's guest is...
I agree with that, but, you know, in I think the two sides I just want to present to this, that one is somewhat against it and the other one is for it. Number one, listen, I think there's no losers. There were no losers yesterday in the Super Bowl. Think about it, all of these athletes, and I hate to jump back to this point, but you really...
Well, there were losers because the Panthers lost.
No, I mean, they're losers in the sense that, you know, they lost the game, but we're talking about uber millionaires who,
right.
A lot of them, not each of them, but we're talking about people who are going back to homes that they're not going to have to worry about mortgages. They're going back to families who are going to be taken care of. They're going back to a life situation that is privileged in probably more than 1/100th of the world's population. And so, I mean, not to go to that level, but I do think on some level we have to always come back to context when we put so much social discussion, so many social issues on a sports figure. That, you know, when we try to make it represent some larger injustice or some larger human behavior kind of rhetoric, when we have to realize, again, these are sports figures who are dealing with a reality far different than ours, right? So here's a gentleman. And so in that case, I say, you know, listen, I support Russell Wilson, but it's a game. You know, it's a game. He's fine. He's going to be back, I think, and I support him. So, you know, kind of get over it as a community and to I'm not Russell, but and to Cam Newton. But the other side of it is that, you know, and then I'm going to jump back into the discussion pool now that I've kind of gotten off my high horse for a second and jump back in. Cam Newton is a competitor, right? And there's been so many competitors that we've seen year in and year out who have to play with their emotion. They have to kind of play with that gunslinger mentality where you throw, you shoot and aim later, right? That you cannot second guess and triple second guess yourself. You have to just act and respond, and that is kind of the modus operandi that a lot of these top tier athletes have to be forced to live in. And so, you know, I look at him being highly emotional. Yes, I do think it shows a level of immaturity. It shows maybe a level of poor decision making of him not being able to really understand the landscape of this situation, that this is a post-Super Bowl press conference, that even though he's a loser, he's never going to have a more polarized or more important press conference of his life, maybe, unless he wins the Super Bowl later. At this point, you know, he should have had the better judgment to say, maybe this isn't the time to just get up and walk away, even though I'm upset, even though it hurts. But I do realize that he plays with that passion, plays with that no excuses, no regrets kind of approach, almost like a Brett Favre or who our boy from Chicago,
Jay Cutler.
I can't remember his name. Jay Cutler. You know, these people who have succeeded and lost under those same type of split-second decision-making, largely based upon emotion. And I think that same decision-making process, that same highly emotive process, has gotten to where he is. And so you live by the sword, you die by the sword. In this case, the sword is his ego, right? His ego gives him the hubris to think that he can quarterback an NFL team and take them to the Super Bowl, right? And that ego is right in that regard. His ego is also the same thing that took him to the press conference and said, you know, I don't want to take this anymore. I don't care what's going on. That said, I don't care about the fact that this is an important press conference. I'm getting up and walk away. So, you know, I think they're both one and the same. And You take it. You take the good with the bad. Like Brett Favre, you took the fact that he threw a bunch of touchdowns, but he threw a bunch of interceptions as well. But he's going to get you to the Super Bowl. Right. Even though if he's the Minnesota Vikings, he may throw a pick, that he shouldn't have thrown and get you out of the Super Bowl contention. But, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I just see that with Cam Newton. We'll get over it. It'll be fine, and he'll be back next year. People are going to talk about it. But listen, again, he's rich. He's fine. He's got a great career. He's in good health. Mm-hmm. He's got all the things that he needs. Let's let it go. Let's not attach these extra racial discussions trying to create it like that there's a media conspiracy. We already knew that. I knew that 10 years ago that the media didn't like black folks. This incident doesn't do anything to change that. I knew that already. So.
Yeah, I agree with that last thing that you said. We're going to take a real quick break. I got one more question for you before we wrap up. Jeremy, we're going to take a quick break on the Lance J Radio Show, Advent Sports Network.
In 49 BC, Julius Caesar led an army over the Rubicon River from Gaul into northern Italy. By doing so, he crossed the point of no return and declaration of war against the Roman Empire. Centuries later, you are listening to Jeremy Winston reach his point of no return only on Advent Sports, The Rubicon.
I want to introduce to the ticket. Y'all have never heard him. It's difficult for me to get my boys from Columbus to come on the show for some reason. But my main man, Donnie Cantrell, is on the show talking a little bit about the Super Bowl. What's going on, Donnie? Good to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. First, before we get into it, man, I really, really appreciate the introduction. I must say that, as a friend to a friend, man, I'm really proud of you for, where this Adventist Sports Network has gone. I know one thing about you that I've learned in the 20-plus years that I've known you is that you're always, you're not afraid to step out on the limb and really push the envelope. So I think that you really have done a good job with this, and in its short infancy state, I think Jeremy Winston as well is doing a good job on the Rubicon. I've had a chance to tune in. Yeah, to a couple podcasts, if that's what you want to call it. But I really appreciate you for inviting me.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
So I'm back with the Lance J Radio Show. I got Jeremy Winston, host of the Rubicon. I had some awesome interviews coming up this week. We are kind of wrapping up our Super Bowl coverage on Advent Sports Network. Jeremy, you made a really, really good point, and we're kind of up against it. We have a couple more minutes. You hit on something that I've been trying to say, and you see the Twitter and the blogosphere and Facebook and people going back and forth. I reached a point where I just decided that mentally it was not worth me thumbing out a long text or Facebook diatribe about this. You hit it on the nose. We know that there's a double standard with Cam Newton. Nobody's questioning that. We know that there are people that aren't. If Cam Newton isn't quote unquote black enough, then there are going to be people that say that you're trying to be something that you're not, and you're not really representing who you are. If he celebrates too much, Middle America is going to dislike him. So he's in a very rough position. He happens to also be a 6'5", good-looking guy, dresses a certain way, has a beautiful family. There are going to be people that hate on that. So there are going to be people that hate on Cam Newton regardless of what he does. When he has a child out of wedlock, people have hated on that. Even though Tom Brady had a child out of wedlock, we understand that it's not a fair standard. That goes for Cam Newton. That goes for RG3. That goes for any African-American quarterback, particularly one that is a high profile. So that's a given. The last question I want to ask you, though, Jeremy, which I think is kind of interesting to me. Someone brought this up to me in a discussion last night. This person saw a lot of African-American people tearing Cam Newton down, and they were discouraged by what they saw, meaning that people were supportive of Cam Newton, but when he pouted and walked off the stage and kind of had a bad act doesn't make him a bad guy. I never thought that he was a bad guy. I think that he could be kind of a tool sometimes, but definitely not a bad guy. I mean, he's a great guy in the community, loves kids, good family man, comes from a good pastoral home background. He's made some mistakes. The laptop in Florida, supposedly they may have taken some money when he played for Auburn, but nobody's perfect. There are a lot of elite athletes that have made mistakes. I talked to several people that were really troubled in the way that people turned on him and went to the other end, Jeremy, to say that his actions were disgraceful and a stain on the game. And the hyperbole where it goes to the other end, like he ruined the Super Bowl, where it really wasn't that deep. He was ticked off. They lost. He was expressing himself. He had to sit next to somebody who was talking about how he couldn't throw the ball and how he sucked. He reacted the way that he did. I didn't personally like it, but that's the way that Cam Newton chose to react. What do you feel? Because I think there are some legs with this. It seems that you expect the vitriol to come from Middle America, so to speak. But how do you feel about a lot of the African-American community maybe turning on him because of his antics after the Super Bowl?
Well, I think that, it's hard to necessarily say what somebody should feel. I mean, again, I'm going to kind of re-echo this one point. There's so much emotion when it comes to sports, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you and I both dealt with the pain of when you're rooting for someone and they lose, right? And so there could be this element where people are overreacting just because they felt bad, and so they're mad already, and they feel like Cam Newton just adds fuel to the fire. But what I just want to remind people is that I don't think that it is fair to criticize him to the level of what people have said about him for walking out of a press conference. I mean, he didn't get into an altercation outside of the field. Like, I mean, something like that, or he wasn't resorted to name calling. Even when Michael Vick, I remember when Michael Vick got escorted out, he was giving the fans the middle finger and stuff like this, cursing at fans and all that stuff. I mean, to me, that type of behavior is worthy of pretty severe criticism from everywhere, because I think anyone from any circle can look at that and say, that is reprehensible, right? If you're going to be an NFL player, you should not be cursing at people, spitting at people, giving them the middle finger, or when Meta World Peace jumps into the stands. I mean, those are very extreme circumstances. But these are events where we can clearly see with our judgment, with our eyes, that this is reprehensible, and almost any response is almost acceptable in terms of criticism. But to get up and walk out of a press conference after one of your most important games out of disappointment is disappointing from a fan's perspective, because you want to say, hey, man, just stand up, take the heat and, walk on, we got your back. But to go to the point where you say someone is a disgrace and
right.
so on, and it is, to me, really putting – to me,
he didn't pick up a chair and throw it at the cameraman. I mean, he didn't. Bobby Knight was a disgrace. Chris Webber, after they lost to Duke, F-bombing everybody, and that was a disgrace. Like you said, Meta World Peace, that was a disgrace. I mean, we've seen athletes go nuclear on many occasions. This was not that.
But yeah, I mean, if you're calibrated to the point where you cannot have somebody get up and walk out of a press conference out of frustration, and you feel like that is so reprehensible that it deserves some great insult, then I think your calibration is off of what is reprehensible and what's not. I mean, it's ill-advised. I think you probably could have made a better decision. But listen, it is people taking things out of context. And also, I mean, I think it's also driven by the media. I mean, I think people wanted to see Cam Newton be, this stand-up class act guy who doesn't get upset and who is going to be gracious under every circumstance. But, that's who you want him to be. That's who people thought that he should be. That doesn't mean that's necessarily who it is. And if you put that much trust and expectation in somebody that you don't know, then you're the fool again, right? Because your judgment is off that you put so much trust and expectation in one person. So, I think people just need to get over it. He's going to be dinged up for whatever. If he's going to lose an endorsement or if he's going to be talked about ill, so forth and so on, he's got to deal with that. So he's laid his bed. He's got to work with it next year. He's got to fight through the crap. And, you know, so people just get over it, you know, get over it. It is what it is.
This will all blow over. We'll all be making fun of LeBron in a couple of weeks. Next time they get beat by 30 by the Spurs or some good team out west, it'll all blow over. So
it'll all blow right when LeBron loses.
I think ultimately Cam, he's a great player. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL. He's a great guy. You see how he treats kids, and he seems to be genuine. I mean, I don't know him personally. He could be a terrible person for all I know, but he seems to be a great guy. He's definitely a great player. He's kind of childish. It can be kind of a tool sometimes, and I think that he'll learn from that. He'll come back. He's going to be in other Super Bowls and competing for championships for years to come.
I think that sums it up.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks a lot.
All right.
I have your.
Hey, listen, man. Let me put a quick plug in for the Rubicon for the second part of my discussion with Professor Tim Golden, and he's going to give a great a philosophical comparison on from Charlie Brown and James Evans from The Good Times to talk about the plight and the struggles of being a male in America. Very compelling conversation. So tune in, see the comparison of Charlie Brown and James Evans from Good Times.
Man, you know, there's the people that listen to my show, that's over their head. I guess I just insulted my own listeners.
Yeah, let's use it.
You're NPR, man. I'm like Jim Rome, man. I'm pandering to the lowest common denominator. Like I'm just a couple of steps above like Terrence and Phillip on South Park, man. You're doing your show is changing the world and the perspective of people around the globe, man. I'm like a low budget version of Jay Leno or Johnny Carson or something. So
whatever.
But yes, for those,
I was trying to give it. I said that sound you heard was 1,000 people clicking the pause button.
For those listening, definitely you definitely want to hear that interview with Dr. Golden. It's really, really good. I had to listen to it a couple of times to really put it together, but he's coming from somewhere that
The Lance J Radio Show is taped at Advent Sports Network Studios, located in beautiful Emerald City of Seattle, Washington.
What is born?